Greetings Earthlings, and welcome to the second attempt at docking Soyuz MS-14 to the ISS. This is a live Q&A with raw space, me. So go ahead and ask your questions in the chat, and I will get to them as I can. Chad V asks what happens if they can't get docked tonight. I'm not actually sure. Now currently the Soyuz is in the same orbit as the ISS, 200 some odd miles above the Earth, and so it's been kept back at a safe distance. I think a couple of kilometers from the station, awaiting the next opportunity to perform a docking attempt, which is tonight. So the sequence of events was on the early morning of the 24th, they attempted to dock to the Poisk module, and the signal amplifier as part of the KURS automated docking system in the Poisk module had a problem which prevented the Soyuz from acquiring a lock on its target. And so they had to abort the docking, and they withdrew it to a safe distance from the ISS. Last night, three of the ISS crew relocated the Soyuz MS-13 spacecraft from the Zvezda module to the Poisk module because the Zvezda module has a functioning signal amplifier. So they opened up the Zvezda module for the MS-14 to dock to tonight, which is what they're going to be attempting. Beginning in about 24 minutes, the broadcast starts from NASA. Someone asked if this is me. Yes, this is me. Testing 1, 2. Trying again. Testing 1, 2. There we go, much better. Okay. Let me catch up on questions. Negative echo. Alright, Invisible asks, will the robot board the ISS when it docks? Yes, it will. They plan on conducting a number of tests with FEDOR the robot, or Skybot T9000 or whatever it is. I know that it's a very capable robot. I mean, they've shown videos of it firing weapons and turning knobs and performing other tasks. So I think the ultimate goal is to test its capabilities as a maybe an EVA tool or a assistant for station tasks that can be robotically controlled, maybe from the ground. I'm not sure. Much of the literature on FEDOR is in Russian, so. Audio is in the pipe, 5 by 5. Space Kitten asks, raw space, is there a failsafe so it doesn't crash into the ISS? I'm sure they have, well, I say I'm sure, but I mean, we know the Russians have a colorful history with crashing spacecraft into space stations with the Mir many years ago. But that was a long time ago. I'm sure they have mechanisms in place to ensure that there's essentially no way that a spacecraft can impact the station, built into their procedures as well as their spacecraft guidance systems. As for specifics, unfortunately, I don't know that, but I could look it up. TLI 69 asks, what is my job? I'm a software developer for a random company, whoever will employ me. John Citizen, how long to docking? So the live coverage begins in about 17 minutes, and the docking is in about 59 minutes, give or take 30 seconds. Space Kitten, I don't know if I'd characterize myself as a genius, but I do write code. The Aryok, Russian-only audio stream, not for this operation. I don't think that Roscosmos is broadcasting. Usually they just broadcast launches and they leave it up to NASA to cover the on-station operations. FEDOR, okay, got it. Proper pronunciation is important to me, so thank you. Joshua Benchamal, the abort yesterday. Well, the abort was on Saturday early morning. The first attempt to dock the Soyuz was aborted because there was a problem on the ISS side with a signal amplifier in the KURS automated docking system in the Poisk module, which prevented the Soyuz from locking onto its target. As a result, it, twisted back and forth looking for its target and was unable to lock on. So they aborted the docking, withdrew it to a safe distance, and here we are. Last night, what happened was one cosmonaut, a Russian, an Italian, and an American, boarded the MS-13 Soyuz, which had already been docked to the Zvezda module, and they relocated it to the Poisk module so that tonight they can dock MS-14 to the Zvezda. Affable. Am I optimistic about FEDOR and other robots in the ISS? He remembers Robonaut 2 had some problems. I don't remember Robonaut 2, but I mean, robotics is intrinsically complex. I mean, the programming, I mean, maybe not so much, but the programming in concert with the very precise mechanicals of a robot make it so that there's a whole lot that can go wrong and very easily, and they tend to be very intricate systems, and things can get jammed up or they can not respond to commands. I mean, you've also got lag issues if they're being controlled from the ground. I don't recall what the issues with Robonaut 2 were, but ultimately I'm very hopeful for the use of robotics in the future, but it's not going to be an easy road, because I think actually robotics will be essential for our expansion into space, because they can do tasks in environments where humans simply can't go. They're essentially impervious to the radiation of space as much as any spacecraft would be, and they don't require food. They just require energy, and so my hope for the future is that we will employ robotics extensively to augment human activities, but to that end, I must be optimistic in order to achieve that hope. Canadarm seems to have no railways to come close to the Russian modules. I know they can spider the Canadarm to robotic arm system, the remote manipulator system, to different locations around the ISS. I don't specifically know what mount points they have on the Russian segments. I'm sure there are. I mean, I would be alarmed if Canadarm was incompatible with the Russian modules, but I don't specifically know where the Canadarm mount points are located. Glenn Clark asks, how much RCS fuel, that's the reaction control system, the attitude thrusters, did MS-14 burn through with all the swinging and swaying? Is it low? Applebull might actually be able to answer that better than me. That I am not sure either how much RCS fuel the Soyuz contains, nor the rate at which it gets burned. I know that the astronauts and the cosmonaut last night, spent half an hour relocating the MS-13 Soyuz to, from one node to another, and they were thrusting all over the place, and there was no concern expressed about, running low on fuel with that, because the Soyuz modules or the Soyuz spacecraft are the lifeboats of the ISS. That's why there's always more than one connected if there are more than three crew on the ISS, because each Soyuz can only handle 3 people, which also is why there were 3 crew aboard the MS-13 yesterday, because with 3 crew on MS-13 and 3 crew remaining on the station, they had to make sure they had enough Soyuz modules to get them safely back to Earth if anything were to go sideways. Tom Brown, yes, this is my face, for better or worse. Tom Brown also asks, do I know why one of the ISS live streams is down? I heard about this the other day, and it was news to me because I've been pretty busy with other stuff. I hadn't been paying attention to the ISS live streams, the high-definition Earth viewing live streams that we've gotten so much amazing footage from. I don't know why it's down. I know that the system, the HDEV system, was built by college students, and it's not an enterprise grade, professional system with redundancies and the sort of robustness you would expect for the aerospace sector. And so I don't know, maybe a component burned out, or I'm not sure, but it's a shame. I hope they get it back up and running, because it's a great service to the rest of us, slugs down here on the planet's surface. Keith Knight asks if I've ever wanted to go to space. Yeah, I mean, I don't have the best stomach for things like free fall and high G maneuvers, and roller coasters are okay, but I don't like the tall ones. But I imagine going to space is not quite like that, because you don't have the sensation of rapid movement and rapid changes in velocity like on a roller coaster. Yeah, I'd like to go. I really don't want to pay $100,000 for a 6-minute trip, i.e. New Shepard, but if the opportunity ever presented itself, I'd love to visit space and see what things look like with my own eyes, crummy as they may be. Circle the Wagons asks about the telemetry data. I presume he's talking about Apollo. The telemetry data is just fine. We have extensive records. Invisible asks, are the Russians still using the exact same launch configuration as they did to launch Sputnik? No. Just because a craft is called Soyuz doesn't mean it's the same thing they used 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago. The rocket has a similar design to what was used, in decades past, but it has undergone, revisions over the years, technical enhancements, and currently the MS-14 is actually a brand new version, which they are testing out. That's one of the purposes of this mission. Mad Matt says, Woot, Hi, Raw. Hello, Mad Matt. Okay. Let's see. Tom Brown asks, what do I think of the Storm Area 51 meme? I think it's dumb. I think it's foolish. Area 51 is a real place. I don't believe there's any alien gobbledygook there, but it is a highly protected military facility, and I think that any social media meme, whatever, suggesting that people raid the place is really foolish, because the people guarding it, they have guns, and then they will use them if necessary. So it's potentially putting perhaps the not so bright amongst us who choose to go enact this meme at mortal physical risk, because if you hop the fence at Area 51, you're going to get a warning shot, and then if you don't heed that, you're going to get more than that. So, bad idea. Can the pores be reprogrammed from the ground? Pores? I'm not sure what you're referring to, MDR 53229. FYI, Lincoln, Young, and Circle the Wagons. Any attempts at trolling or proselytizing flat earth nonsense will result in a swift ejection from the chat. We don't put up with that garbage here. Thank you very much to the mods, by the way, for helping me with those folks. Speaking of Area 51, I saw a video, it was a couple years old, but I only saw it recently, of some weird guy who, his whole channel revolves around licking things. And so he snuck up to some back entrance to Area 51, or to the Area 51, site, and licked the warning sign on the fence, and then stole the warning sign, and then he got a warning shot from who he didn't even see where from. It was just he got a warning shot from some sniper somewhere, and took off running like a little punk. But the point is that they are very vigilant at such facilities. AJ Rai asks, how are the Soyuz 2.1 different from normal Soyuz boosters? I don't actually know. I haven't had the opportunity to do that research. You might ask Appable. Oh yeah, he's already responding. Digital Avionics. Okay, we've got live NASA coverage starting in about 3 minutes here. So I'm probably going to drop off and prepare the transition to live stream. Thanks for your questions, and I'm sure we can probably make this a regular thing, since I've got my setup more or less working. So thank you.
Good evening from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. We're back again this evening for a second attempt of an unpiloted Soyuz MS-14 spacecraft to dock to the International Space Station just a couple of days after an aborted attempt that sent the international partners into quite a bit of replanning over the course of the last 2 days to accommodate the arrival of this unpiloted Soyuz vehicle that is scheduled to dock to the aft port of the Zvezda service module about 41 minutes from now. We'll talk about what has transpired over the past few days up in orbit and all the particulars associated with setting the stage for tonight's second docking attempt in just a moment. But first, let's talk about where we're at here in the flight control room, where the Orbit 3 team of flight controllers is on console, led by Flight Director Zeb Scoville on the right side of your screen. To his right is spacecraft communicator Stephen Zenter, who would talk to the space station crew if required throughout the course of tonight's activities. This second approach of the unpiloted Soyuz MS-14 spacecraft is under the control of the Russian flight control team across the ocean at the Russian Mission Control Center on the outskirts of Moscow in the town of Korolyov, where they are monitoring the methodical approach of the Soyuz MS-14, with docking scheduled, as I mentioned a moment ago, just over 40 minutes from now. It was Saturday morning, the wee hours of Saturday morning, late Friday night U.S. time, when the Soyuz MS-14 was on final approach for an automated docking to the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. It had launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on Wednesday evening U.S. time, early Thursday morning Baikonur time, on a Soyuz 2.1A booster at the start of a test flight of its compatibility to fly on that booster, since it is the 2.1A booster that will be used starting next March to launch Soyuz spacecraft with crews on board to the International Space Station. The unpiloted Soyuz also with a bevy of flight test objectives to test a modernized guidance, navigation, and control system, a motion control system, and an entry control system for when it undocks from the station and lands on the steppe of Kazakhstan under its parachutes, that coming up next week. However, as the Soyuz arrived to within about 100 meters of the International Space Station's Poisk module and was attempting to use its KURS automated rendezvous system to lock on to a comparable KURS system on the Poisk module, that we ran into issues where the two KURS systems were not communicating properly with one another. The Soyuz vehicle's KURS system was operating normally, but the KURS system, the automated rendezvous system on the Poisk module itself, was not cooperating, suspected to be because of a faulty amplifier, a component of the KURS system on the station side of that KURS interface. And as a result, the two cosmonauts who were monitoring the approach of the Soyuz vehicle to the station, Station Commander Alexei Ovchinin and Flight Engineer Alexander Skvortsov, sent a command to abort the approach of the Soyuz MS-14, and it backed away safely from the space station. The crew was never in any danger, and the Soyuz moved away to a very safe distance from the station and began a trajectory, basically a racetrack trajectory, to fly in front of, above, and behind the International Space Station while Russian officials assessed the next course of action. Early Saturday morning, within hours of that aborted approach, they came up with a very agile and innovative plan to have Skvortsov, Drew Morgan of NASA, and Luca Parmitano of the European Space Agency climb into their Soyuz MS-13 spacecraft that was docked to the aft port of the Zvezda service module, and to conduct a fly-around and relocation of that vehicle from the aft port of Zvezda to the Poisk module. This is a replay from Sunday night when Skvortsov, Morgan, and Parmitano undocked from the aft port of Zvezda. They backed the Soyuz MS-13 away from the service module to about a distance of some 38 meters. They rotated, Skvortsov was under manual control of the flying of the Soyuz vehicle. He rotated the Soyuz into the proper orientation to begin a fly-around a short fly around to place the Soyuz 38 meters above the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the International Space Station's Russian segment. Skvortsov then manually flew the Soyuz in for a pinpoint docking to the Poisk module. The KURS system was not required. This was all under the manual control of Skvortsov in the center seat of the descent module, flanked by Parmitano and Morgan. Docking occurred 24 minutes after undocking, and the Soyuz was relocated to the Poisk module, the first time that a Soyuz relocation had been executed since August of 2015. The purpose of relocating the MS-13 spacecraft from the aft port of the Zvezda service module to the top port of the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment was to open up the aft port of Zvezda for the arrival tonight of the MS-14 spacecraft, the unpiloted spacecraft. The theory being that the manual fly-around and docking of the Soyuz last night did not require a KURS automated rendezvous system, and the MS-14, which does not have a backup Toru or telerobotically operated rendezvous system because it is in a manned configuration, needs the KURS system to basically automatically guide itself into a docking port. About 30 minutes or so ago, the KURS system on both the Soyuz MS-14, the unpiloted craft, and the Zvezda service module were activated. They have communicated with each other properly, so the anticipation is this evening that we will have a smooth and uneventful docking about 35 minutes from now to bring that unpiloted craft in and complete this phase of its test flight. The Soyuz MS-14 is conducting a series of small thruster maneuvers, fine-tuning its path to the International Space Station, so-called impulse burns. We are expecting the Soyuz to approach the International Space Station and arrive in the neighborhood of the station about 11.5 minutes from now, where it will initiate a fly-around of about 62 degrees of angle at a range of 400 meters to precisely align its forward docking probe with the aft port of the Zvezda service module. At that point, the automated sequence built into the Soyuz's computers will stop its approach for a brief period of station keeping to make sure that Russian flight controllers there at the Russian Mission Control Center, as well as the two cosmonauts on board the station, Alexei Ovchinin and Alexander Skvortsov, are happy with the angles and the alignment of the Soyuz with the Zvezda service module before the command is issued for a final approach. Although there are no humans on board the Soyuz MS-14, still strapped inside the center seat is the humanoid robot FEDOR. The Russians call it Skybot. You saw that humanoid robot during launch in the center seat, normally occupied by the Soyuz commander. The robot will be brought on board the station a few days from now for several days of experiments by the two cosmonauts on board the station before the robot is brought back into the Soyuz, strapped back into the center seat for the undocking and parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan.
And it's kind of like garbled symbols is all. Proceeding with the data displayed on the...
While all of this Soyuz activity has been ongoing over the course of the past few days, the crew on board the International Space Station, particularly the USOS, or United States Orbital Segment crew of Christina Cook, Nick Hague, Drew Morgan, and Luca Parmitano of the European Space Agency, they have been loading cargo on board the SpaceX Dragon cargo ship that is berthed to the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. The hatch to Dragon was closed earlier today. Robotic ground controllers in the next several hours will be at their consoles to maneuver the Canadarm2 robotic arm into place to grapple Dragon in advance of the unbolting of the 16 bolts that are holding Dragon in place to the common berthing mechanism on the Earth-facing side of the Harmony module. It will be detached from Harmony, maneuvered into its release position, and the scheduled release of Dragon from the Canadarm2 robotic arm is planned for 9:42 a.m. Central Time on Tuesday morning. 10:42 a.m. Eastern Time will be on the air with coverage of that operation. A few minutes earlier at 9:15 a.m. Central, 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 major dynamic operations taking place aboard the International Space Station within a 36-hour period.
100 meters with change, and closing in at 4.45 meters per second. Copy, Alexander.
This is a view from an external camera on the Soyuz MS-14 spacecraft, the unpiloted spacecraft that's in the home stretch of a journey that began with its launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan last Wednesday night, U.S. time. At this hour, the International Space Station is flying 260 miles above the Earth, moving from southwest to northeast, crossing the west coast of Africa. In the lower left-hand corner of this engineering camera view, you see 1.6 kilometers, and then the value underneath, minus 4.43 meters per second. That is the distance between the Soyuz and the International Space Station and its rate of closure on the station. Everything continues to proceed on track normally. The Soyuz systems have functioned perfectly throughout the course of its test flight to the International Space Station, and if all goes as planned, the KURS system on the Zvezda service module will automatically guide the Soyuz in for a docking that is scheduled less than 30 minutes from now. Once the Soyuz docks, there will be a brief period of relative motion dampening out between the two vehicles at the docking interface before the docking probe on the forward end of the Soyuz is retracted to basically pull the Soyuz in flush with the docking surface on the Zvezda service module's aft port. That will form a hard mate once the hooks are closed, and then Ovchinin and Skvortsov will spend the next couple of orbits of the Earth, about 3 hours worth of leak checks before the vestibule between the Soyuz and the Zvezda service module is pressurized, setting the stage for the opening of the hatch to the Soyuz vehicle that is planned just before 4 a.m. Central Time on Tuesday morning. We're about 6 minutes away from the point at which the Soyuz MS-14 will arrive in the vicinity of the International Space Station to begin its fly-around. Once again, all of the second rendezvous attempt thruster firings, the rendezvous burns, have been executed in flawless fashion by the Soyuz engines, placing the Soyuz in a position for a second docking attempt this evening that will complete the first critical phase of its test flight, a test flight that will set the stage for the modifications built into the Soyuz vehicle, as well as the performance of the 2.1A booster that sent it into orbit last Wednesday night to be utilized for the launching of KURS on this new configuration beginning next March.
Please prepare the 47 procedure. Copy with parameters 0x0 and 100 and 0. We concur. Please get it armed and ready to be fired on time. Copy.
The latest in the series of mid-course correction burns, or impulse burns as they are called, being conducted on automated command by the Soyuz engines. This basically to null out any dispersions in its approach to the International Space Station, fine-tuning its path for the beginning of the fly-around of the station about 4 minutes from now. Quickly, just to note, while all of this activity is going on up on orbit at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center outside of Moscow in Star City, Russia, the next crew to launch to the International Space Station, Russian cosmonaut Oleg Skripochka in the middle of your picture here, NASA's Jessica Meir on the right, and on the left, United Arab Emirates spaceflight participant Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri are in the final phase of their training. They will be participating in their final qualification exams along with their backups later this week on Thursday and Friday, and then they plan to fly to the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan September 10th for the final phase of their training that will lead to their launch on the Soyuz MS-15 spacecraft on Wednesday, September 25th. That launch, the last ever to be conducted on an older version Soyuz FG booster, and the last launch currently planned from Yuri Gagarin's launch pad on Site 1 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. That launch scheduled for September 25th.
At the beginning of the fly around, you are going to be entering insulation. Copy.
The Soyuz MS-14 now has closed to within about 400 meters of the International Space Station, closing at a rate of just over 1 meter per second.
Fly around and work.
The fly around of the International Space Station has begun. Now that we're inside 400 meters, the fly around angle of 62 degrees will position the MS-14's forward docking probe in precise alignment with the aft port of the Zvezda service module, which again was cleared last night, about 24 hours ago, with the relocation of the Soyuz MS-13 spacecraft that had been docked to Zvezda since its arrival with Skvortsov, Parmitano, and Morgan back on July 20th. And as the International Space Station flies just off the northern coast of Africa over the Mediterranean, our first clear view of the Soyuz MS-14. Its thrusters continued to fire during this fly-around maneuver. It's all automated. The Soyuz vehicle has performed flawlessly since its launch last week from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Its first approach for docking, of course, aborted late Friday night into the early morning hours Saturday because of an automated rendezvous system issue with the passive KURS automated rendezvous system on the Poisk module. A good view of the Soyuz MS-14 continuing its fly around of the International Space Station. At the bottom of your screen is the MS-13 spacecraft that is docked to the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the International Space Station, the vehicle that was flown by 3 of the crew members of Expedition 60 last night to open up the Zvezda docking port.
Будет включена пересветка в 54 минуты.
The International Space Station flying into an orbital sunrise,
Activate the AGC mode.
about to pass directly over the capital of Turkey, Ankara. About 45 degrees of fly around remaining for the Soyuz MS-14, flying very placidly now over the Black Sea. And again, on the right side of your screen, the MS-13, the Soyuz vehicle that was relocated last night.
And the difference of the view. Copy. Could you give us a range assessment using either range ruler or the squares on the overlay? Yeah, the KURS is showing about 213. And I would say that based on the size of the service module on the overlay grid, It's very, very close to what the KURS is showing. It's about 1 1/3 of a square. Copy.
The reports from the Russian Mission Control Center indicate that all of the range and rate of closure values are agreeing, meaning that the KURS automated rendezvous system so far is functioning perfectly, and the communication between the KURS system on the Soyuz itself and the KURS system on the aft port of the Zvezda service module.
We see a final approach flag set on the station side. Copy.
This view now from the Soyuz MS-14 external engineering camera. About 180 meters separating Soyuz from the aft port of the Zvezda service module, which is visible almost at the center of the crosshairs. As the fly-around is about to be completed, there'll be a brief period of station keeping before the command is issued for final approach for this unpiloted Soyuz craft.
The range is about 1.5 squares on the overlay grid, and I can confirm that it matches the KURS data about 170 meters. Copy. Station keeping confirmed.
And the Russian flight control team confirms that station keeping has begun.
Keeping, the rates are 0.
So all of the motion on the Soyuz MS-14 has been nulled at this point at a distance of 168 meters between the Soyuz and the aft port of the Zvezda service module.
Ready to send the final approach command on Argo. Copy that. I'm ready.
We're in a short handover here between satellites on our tracking and data relay satellite system. We will regain the downlink video from the station momentarily.
The video feed for a second there, so please provide continuous commentary.
And the command has been issued for final approach.
Closing rate is 0.79 meters per second. Service module is taking up 2 squares on the overlay grid, which matches the KURS range data. Everything is nominal. Copy, Alexander.
145 meters now, Soyuz steadily approaching for a docking to the aft port of the Zvezda service module.
115 meters range, which matches the overlay. Copy, Alexander.
"100 meters now separating Soyuz from the service module. This view from a truss camera on the International Space Station. Good alignment between the Soyuz, the KURS automated rendezvous system operating normally so far.
And I'm seeing the outline of the target. The target is almost smack in the center of the Zvezda, and
The International Space Station is flying over northern Kazakhstan, soon to pass over the capital of Kazakhstan, newly named Nur Sultan. Now 70 meters separating the Soyuz and the International Space Station. Again, following contact and capture, the forward docking probe on the Soyuz will be retracted. The hooks will close at the docking interface to form a hard mate. And that will be the precursor to Alexei Ovchinin, the station commander, and Alexander Skvortsov conducting 2 orbits worth of leak checks to make sure that there's an airtight seal between the Soyuz and the station before the hatch to the Soyuz vehicle is opened in the early morning hours Tuesday. A good view of the aft docking port on the Zvezda service module. Zvezda having launched in July of 2000 as the centerpiece of the Russian segment of the International Space Station.
45 meters. 45 meters, copy, Alexander.
And this view is from a television camera on the aft port of the Zvezda service module. This was the same camera that was employed when the European Space Agency's automated transfer vehicle, the ATV, was delivering cargo to the International Space Station.
The range is about 35 meters, by my estimate.
This view looking dead on to the forward docking probe on the Soyuz MS-14 spacecraft as it negotiates the final few meters before contact and capture.
Range is about 31 meters. Copy.
The view from now from the Soyuz external engineering camera, about 30 meters separating the 2 vehicles.
5 meters.
Good alignment reported by the Russian flight control team.
The crosshairs are aligned, but the target has moved a little bit off center. Copy. After 15 meters, you do not need to continue monitoring visually. Copy.
And once again, this view of the slowly approaching Soyuz vehicle from a television camera on the aft end of the Zvezda service module, right next to the docking target itself.
20 meters. Copy.
Everything reported to be nominal from the Russian flight control team in Korolyov. 25 meters now separating Soyuz and its port of call.
SSVP docking assembly is activated and ready for docking. Copy. We've switched to Baza AR. Copy.
"15 meters now separating the Soyuz from this view from the Zvezda aft port camera.
Approach confirmed. The motion is very slow and steady. Everything looks nominal within the approach corridor. The range is about between 9 to 8 meters. Copy.
Just about 8 meters now separating Soyuz and Zvezda.
Did I call it? I love my job.
The approach continues to be right on the money as we stand by for contact and capture of the International Space Station.
Я ему принесла радиограмму за 2 дня до того, как они ее обсуждать начали.
Ожидаем касания.
Contact.
Инту.
Copy.
Right on the doorstep, the Soyuz about to contact. Contact confirmed and capture confirmed at 10:08 p.m. Central Time, 11:08 p.m. Eastern Time, as the International Space Station flew 260 miles over eastern Mongolia. The Soyuz MS-14, on its second attempt, is home at the aft port of the Zvezda service module, completing the first phase of its test flight. And the docking probe on the forward end of the Soyuz is now in the process of retracting. Again, the second time was the charm, a flawless approach, perfect operation of the KURS automated rendezvous system on both the Soyuz and on the passive side, the Zvezda service module, following last night's Soyuz relocation to free up this aft port. Again, docking occurring at 10:08 p.m. Central Time, 11:08 p.m. Eastern Time.
Copy, Alexander.
The docking probe continues to retract. This will enable hooks to close to form a hard mate between Soyuz and the International Space Station's Zvezda service module. Again, the unpiloted Soyuz vehicle is safely in port at the Zvezda service module, and soon the hatch will open, and within the next few days, the humanoid robot, the FEDOR as it is called, will be brought on board the station to increase the population of the station from 6 to 7.
Moscow Station on space to ground 1. Go ahead, Alexander.
The probe, the docking probe on the forward end of Soyuz has now completed retracting, and the hooks are now driving to form a hard mate between Soyuz and the Zvezda service module.
Recording and so on. That will be recommended by the ISS flight control room after we hand the floor over to them once the hooks are closed. Copy.
Экипаж ЦП Москва в канале ЗГ-1 по телевидению.
Station Moscow on space to ground 1 for video. Alexei, you are go to terminate recording and start downloading the files for subsequent downlink. Copy. And
this now is the current configuration of the International Space Station, the Soyuz MS-13, that was tended by 3 of the crew members of the International Space Station for its relocation to the Poisk module on Sunday night, now safely in place on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. The MS-14, the unpiloted craft, completing its test flight from the Baikonur Cosmodrome to the aft port of the Zvezda service module, where it docked just about 6 minutes ago.
Station Moscow.
And we have confirmation that the hooks are now closed, so we have a hard mate now between the unpiloted Soyuz MS-14.
On a successful docking. Thank you so much. Great job. We're going to hand you back over to the front room. Copy, Yuri. Thank you so much. Likewise. Congratulations are in order. Great job and good luck. Thank you and goodbye. This is front room. This is your Glavny. Congratulations to you. We've done it and you've done it. Great job, guys.
Russian flight controllers offering Alexei Ovchinin.
We all did a good job.
And Alexander Skvortsov, their hearty congratulations. A very innovative and agile plan concocted by the Russian management and RSC Energia officials to recoup from an aborted docking attempt late Friday night into early Saturday morning. Within hours, the plan was reworked to call for the Soyuz MS-13 crew to climb aboard their vehicle, undock last night from the aft port of Zvezda with a healthy KURS automated rendezvous system, and fly around for a manual docking to the Poisk module, which had experienced a suspect performance of its KURS rendezvous system on the first docking attempt, which was aborted. So with the Soyuz MS-13 safely in place at its new port, the MS-14 was able to flawlessly approach and dock to the aft port of the Zvezda service module a few minutes ago at 10:08 p.m. Central Time, 11:08 p.m. Eastern Time, to complete its unpiloted journey to the International Space Station, where it will stay for the next 2 weeks. With that, we'll wrap up our coverage for this evening with 2 Soyuz vehicles having rearranged docking ports, and a total of 3 Soyuz vehicles now at the International Space Station. Let's talk about tomorrow's programming, because operations are not complete in this flurry of activity on board the orbital laboratory. Next up, the release of the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft loaded with supplies and valuable scientific experiments to be returned to Earth for a parachute-assisted splashdown in the Pacific on Tuesday afternoon. First, the Canadarm2 robotic arm will grapple Dragon. It will be unbolted and unberthed from the space-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station, maneuvered into its release position. Our coverage of all of this activity will begin tomorrow morning on NASA television at 9:15 a.m. Central Time, 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time, with the robotic release scheduled at 9:42 a.m. Central, 10:42 a.m. Eastern Time. Dragon will move to a safe distance away from the International Space Station for its deorbit burn. Splashdown in the Pacific, not covered on NASA television, is scheduled for 3:21 p.m. Central Time, 4:21 p.m. Eastern Time, to wrap up its mission. That splashdown to take place about 300 miles to the southwest of Long Beach, California. So with that, we'll conclude our coverage for this evening. A safe and successful approach and docking of the unpiloted Soyuz MS-14, now nestled into port at the aft end of the Zvezda service module. That's it for tonight. Thank you for staying with us over the course of over the last several nights while all of this activity has unfolded. But at the moment, everything is in great shape on board the International Space Station following tonight's docking of the Soyuz MS-14 to the Zvezda service module. We'll see you tomorrow morning for SpaceX release coverage. In the meantime, this is Mission Control Houston.
you.